Britons would rather forget Andrew than forgive Harry. From the moment the bells of St. George's Chapel rang in May 2018, it was sold as a fairy tale for the modern age. A prince scarred by loss found love with a self-made actress from across the Atlantic. The world tuned in to watch Prince Harry and Meghan Markle seal their vows, with the Archbishop of Canterbury's blessing and gospel choirs harmonizing through Windsor's ancient stone. Commentators gushed that this was the royal family's rebirth, proof that an institution built on continuity could adapt, modernize, even heal the wounds of Diana's generation. A fresh start for the firm, one royal editor proclaimed, a love story that could save the monarchy. But fairy tales have expiry dates, and this one had cracks from the start. Less than 3 years later, Oprah Winfrey was leaning in across her rose garden chairs, whispering the words that detonated Buckingham Palace's reputation. "Were you silenced or were you silent?" Meghan's answer, "I was silenced," was not just confession, it was indictment. Harry piled on, revealing that his father had stopped taking my calls, and that there were conversations about how dark Archie's skin might be. Private pain had become public spectacle, and the fairy tale's glass slipper shattered on live television. Then came Netflix. In December 2022, Harry and Meghan delivered 6 episodes of curated grievances. Cameras followed them through Montecito estates, candlelit interviews, and grainy clips of paparazzi. The Sussexes' narrative painted William as screaming, Charles as distant, courtiers as cruel. "They were happy to lie to protect my brother," Harry said, "but unwilling to tell the truth to protect us." The so-called Fab Four, William, Kate, Harry, Meghan, rebranded by tabloids as the Fractured Four. If the wedding had promised rebirth, Netflix staged the funeral. By the time Spare hit the shelves in January 2023, the fallout was irreversible. Harry immortalized in print the plea of his father, "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." He described William as his arch-nemesis, accused Camilla of planting stories, confessed to drug use, and even boasted about Taliban kills. The memoir sold millions, but each copy was another nail in the coffin of familial trust. A father's private grief became a meme. A brother's rage became an anecdote. A family once defined by silence was now narrated like pulp fiction. Drama commentary cuts sharper. The fairy tale wasn't just over. It was inverted. The wedding carriage ride through Windsor's cobbled streets, Rose's throne, crowds cheering, now looks less like a celebration and more like a prologue to collapse. Every romantic handhold captured in 2018 is juxtaposed with today's estrangement. Every balcony smile reads like foreshadowing of betrayal. And the public, who once wept with joy at Harry's happiness, now sigh with fatigue at his grievances. The fallout has been merciless. Contracts in California were supposed to cement independence, yet Spotify executives mocked them as F***ing grifters. Netflix grew impatient with middling ratings. Archwell, their nonprofit, struggled with identity beyond self-promotion. Even sympathetic commentators admitted, the brand is slipping. For Harry, the fairy tale promised a kingdom of his own. What he got instead was a rented stage where applause dwindled. And now, whispers of refuge in England surface like smoke from an old fire. Could Harry really imagine returning to the land he torched, to the institution he exposed, to the family he accused? According to insiders, yes. He wants a place back here, one commentator speculated, a refuge after Meghan. But refuge in Windsor is no fairy tale. It is a battlefield paved with fallout. Because in the story of Harry and Meghan, happily ever after never arrived. There was only ever a crown, a stage, and the inevitable crash when fairy tales meet reality. When Harry and Meghan boarded that flight in 2020, leaving behind Sandringham, courtiers, and Commonwealth duty, California shimmered like a promised land. Sunlit beaches, Hollywood friends, and financial independence, all the things the monarchy denied them, seemed within reach. "We just wanted peace," Harry told Oprah. Meghan described Montecito as their safe haven. For a brief moment, the American dream seemed real. No courtiers, no Boeing, no tabloids at the palace gates. Just freedom, privacy, and the lucrative contracts to bankroll their new life. But California dreams are fragile. What looked like refuge soon resembled exile gilded with palm trees. The Montecito mansion, with its rose gardens and 9 bedrooms, symbolized success, but also isolation. "It's like a fortress," one insider observed, beautiful, but cut off. Instead of royal duties, the couple now had production meetings. Instead of applause from balcony crowds, they had ratings charts. Independence meant survival through content, and survival through content meant endless exposure, the very thing they once claimed to flee. Spotify was the first crack. In 2020, the Sussexes signed a deal reportedly worth $20 million. 3 years later, it collapsed. A Spotify executive, Bill Simmons, called them "effing grifters," ridiculing Harry's supposed lack of contribution. Meghan's Archetypes podcast won an award, but insiders admitted it never performed strongly enough to justify the deal. It was humiliating. From royal stages to being mocked in boardrooms. Netflix offered more longevity, but cracks showed there too. Their 6-part documentary drew massive attention initially, but the follow-up projects underperformed. With Love, Meghan, her lifestyle series barely cracked Netflix's global top 150. Charles Ray sneered, "Netflix wants success. This isn't success." The numbers didn't lie. Fascination with Harry and Meghan as rebels was high. Fascination with Meghan selling pasta recipes was not. Drama commentary sharpens the irony. They left Britain to escape being royal reality stars, yet in California they became precisely that: royals turned reality content. Privacy was never the product. Exposure was. And without the palace as backdrop, their story risked becoming ordinary celebrity gossip. Archewell, their nonprofit, also struggled. Reports in 2023 revealed staff turnover, vague goals, and minimal impact compared to their lofty mission statements. Meghan's relaunch of social media accounts, including a return to Instagram, was inconsistent. One week it was glossy behind-the-scenes videos. The next it was blurry shots of Archie and Lilibet with emojis covering their faces. Charles Ray derided it as pointless. Why show children's heads with little gray hearts? Either show them or don't. To critics, it epitomized contradiction, demanding privacy while performing curated glimpses. For Harry, the cracks were personal too. Invictus Games remained his passion project, but even there the narrative was co-opted. Meghan's speeches at Invictus events drew as much attention as Harry's work with veterans. In Colombia in 2024, Meghan dominated photographs, while Harry appeared awkwardly in the background. Body language experts like Judy James noted his fig leaf posture, hands clasped, shoulders slumped, while Meghan radiated confidence. The spare, once overshadowed by the heir, was now overshadowed by his wife. Commentary cuts deeper. California had promised freedom from hierarchy, but in practice Harry only traded one hierarchy for another. In Britain, William was the heir, Harry the spare. In California, Meghan became the star, Harry the accessory. When she sells jam jars or posts inspirational quotes, the press amplifies it. When Harry speaks at Well Child or Invictus, it barely trends. He wanted refuge, but found irrelevance. Meanwhile, the couple's financial independence depended on maintaining relevance in the very media ecosystem they claimed to despise. Their life in California became a paradox. Criticize the press while feeding it, denounce celebrity culture while embodying it, demand privacy while selling docuseries. The cracks were not cosmetic, they were structural. And so the California dream, once shimmering with promise, now looks like a mirage. Spotify gone, Netflix faltering, Archewell struggling, public opinion collapsing. Even Hollywood insiders whisper doubts. One executive told Variety, "They're overexposed, and audiences are moving on." For Meghan, perhaps reinvention is still possible. For Harry, reinvention may mean returning to the very institution he tried to burn. Thus, whispers of return to England for refuge emerge not as nostalgia, but as necessity. The California dream is cracking, and when dreams crack, men look for home. But for Harry, England is no homecoming. It is the battlefield he fled. Harry has always lived in someone else's shadow. In Britain, it was William, the heir to the throne, the golden child, the steady hand destined for the crown. In California, it is Meghan, his wife, actress turned brand, commanding the spotlight with her charisma and carefully curated image. For a man who once longed to stand on his own, Harry now finds himself stranded between two worlds, overshadowed in both. In Montecito, Meghan's presence is the gravitational center. Netflix contracts, Instagram relaunches, lifestyle projects, every initiative carries her voice, her image, her energy. When the couple appeared on Time magazine's most influential list, the symbolism was inescapable. Meghan stood tall at the front, Harry peered over her shoulder in the background. Social media mocked it mercilessly. One viral meme quipped, "He looks like her hairdresser asking if she's happy with the cut." What should have been a celebration of equality became a metaphor for imbalance. Meghan shines, Harry fades. But returning to Britain offers no relief. There, William dominates not by personality but by position. Spare revealed Harry's bitterness. William as arch-nemesis, William as the heir, William as the one protected by the palace machine. Harry complained, "They were happy to lie to protect my brother, but unwilling to tell the truth to protect us." In Windsor's halls, William is the immovable object respected by the public, untouchable within the institution. Harry is the wandering spare, tolerated at funerals, sidelined at coronations, cut from balcony appearances. And then there is Charles, torn between paternal instinct and regal duty. His frailty has made him sympathetic, his plea immortalized in Spare. "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." Yet the king cannot simply open his arms. Every meeting with Harry risks becoming tomorrow's headline. Every conversation risks betrayal. For Charles, compassion is weakness. For Harry, suspicion is suffocating. Drama commentary sharpens the paradox. Harry is a prince without a palace, a husband without a spotlight. In California, he plays the supporting role in Meghan's narrative. In Britain, he plays the estranged son, forever outside the heir's circle. He has traded one hierarchy for another, only to find himself marginalized in both. It is this dual shadow that fuels whispers of his desperate plan. Sources suggest he contemplates returning to England for refuge, seeking not ceremony but stability, not power but identity. But the irony is cruel. Refuge in England means confronting the brother who will never forgive, the father who cannot fully trust, and the public who pulls him below irrelevance. Refuge is not homecoming. It is risk dressed as sanctuary. So Harry stands at a crossroads. Behind him, Meghan's California glow that casts him into the background. Before him, William and Charles' family yet foes, powerful yet distant. To remain in Montecito is to stay overshadowed. To return to Windsor is to risk being outcast. And so the question looms. Where does the spare belong when both worlds reject him? For now, Harry remains caught between shadows, wandering between California's cameras and Windsor's cold corridors. And in that tension lies the seed of his next move, a desperate plan to seek refuge in the very kingdom he once fled. Refuge. It's a noble word, a word soaked in the promise of safety, stability, and home. But when whispered in the same breath as Prince Harry, it sounds less like salvation and more like surrender. Reports now suggest that, as his California dream fades and his marriage enters turbulence, Harry is contemplating a return to England for refuge. Yet the irony is cruel. The land he once fled for freedom is now being eyed as sanctuary, as if the very battleground he scorched could be rebuilt into safe harbor. Sources close to the Sussexes insist Harry misses aspects of Britain, the camaraderie of old military friends, the authenticity of the pub, even the rhythm of his Invictus Games work. One former comrade told The Times, "Harry is happiest when he's around the lads, talking army, not cameras." That longing, they say, fuels his daydream of refuge. But nostalgia is not the same as belonging. The monarchy has moved on, and the man once embraced as Diana's son now carries the stigma of betrayer. The plan, if one can even call it that, reeks of desperation. Harry envisions slipping back into a country where the tabloids savage him daily, where his brother blocks his path, where his father hesitates to even invite him for tea. It is the fantasy of a man who has discovered that Montecito mansions and Netflix contracts cannot fill the void of identity. Refuge is not just a roof, it is relevance. And Harry, once the most popular royal, has watched his approval collapse from golden boy to national irritant. Drama commentary sharpens the absurdity. Imagine seeking refuge in the very palace whose walls you dynamited with Oprah interviews, Netflix close-ups, and memoir revelations. This is not return, it is trespass disguised as nostalgia. Refuge, in Harry's mind, means rewriting the narrative. Not exile, but retreat. Not failure, but homecoming. Yet to the public, it reeks of something darker, opportunism. Some analysts suggest financial motives underlie the talk. Archewell is floundering, Spotify has collapsed, Netflix is uncertain. A base in Britain, even symbolic, could restore credibility and unlock new avenues: public speaking, charitable patronages, perhaps even security privileges. Refuge could easily become rebrand. A royal biographer told Vanity Fair, Harry's instinct is survival, not reconciliation. He needs a foothold in Britain if the California brand continues to slip. But the risks are staggering. William remains immovable, drawing his red line. Charles is cautious, fearing further leaks. The public polling at 73% has already made its verdict clear. No reconciliation, no welcome mat. A return to England framed as refuge would be mocked as cowardice. Headlines would not call him the prodigal son. They would call him the failed exile. And Meghan? Her silence, were this plan ever to materialize, would be deafening. For Harry to seek refuge in the kingdom she abandoned would undermine everything they claimed in 2020. That they had chosen freedom over duty, privacy over performance, love over loyalty to the crown. Meghan would be forced to craft a counter-narrative. Was this temporary? Strategic? Or was it proof of fracture? Refuge for Harry could easily look like rebellion against her. So what, then, is the desperate plan? At its core, it is not strategy. It is instinct, the instinct of a man adrift, clawing for the one place he still recognizes, even if that place rejects him. The truth is, Harry does not want refuge in England. He wants refuge from irrelevance. And Windsor, however hostile, remains the only stage big enough to make him matter again. Yet the monarchy is not a halfway house. It does not offer refuge, it offers ritual. And Harry, once its most mischievous son, has broken the rituals too deeply. His desperate plan may earn him a headline, perhaps even a photo. But refuge? That is an illusion, a mirage shimmering across the grey skies of London, always out of reach. If Harry dreams of refuge in England, Meghan dreams of control over the narrative. For a woman who has built her brand on image management, curated Instagram posts, staged Netflix angles, interviews crafted like courtroom testimonies, there is nothing more dangerous than letting her husband become the runaway protagonist in a story of desperation. Harry might whisper of returning home, but Meghan will never allow the world to believe he is fleeing from her. From the beginning, Meghan has been the architect of spin. During the Oprah interview, she framed her time in the palace as a battle for survival. I just didn't want to be alive anymore. Harry supported her testimony, but the framing was hers. In their Netflix series, Meghan's voiceover guided the narrative, recounting humiliations and triumphs. Harry often appeared as the secondary witness, useful, emotional, but never the commanding narrator. Even in Spare, critics noted her shadow. The Spectator scoffed that the memoir reads like a couple's vendetta, not a prince's confession. So when whispers emerge that Harry is plotting refuge in England after marital cracks, Meghan will counterstrike. She has several tools. The first is denial. Public appearances that emphasize unity. Hand-holding at events, synchronized outfits, affectionate gestures on stage, all designed to broadcast, there is no fracture here. Meghan has used this tactic before. At the 2022 One Young World Summit in Manchester, her subtle knee pad to a visibly grumpy Harry was dissected as both maternal and strategic, a silent command to the cameras that they were still aligned. The second tool is reframe. If Harry spends more time in England, Meghan could spin it not as separation, but as strategy. A division of labor, perhaps, where Harry handles veterans' charities and Invictus Games while she runs Archewell and lifestyle ventures in California. In this narrative, Harry isn't running away, he's broadening their reach. The exile becomes expansion. The fracture becomes flexibility. And Meghan will not hesitate to use media allies to reinforce her version. In California, friendly outlets have already softened her image. Variety once profiled her with a headline describing her as grounded, warm, and playful. Such coverage contrasts starkly with Britain's tabloid ferocity, but it proves her ability to seed counter-narratives. If Harry is painted as desperate in the UK press, Meghan will ensure glossy profiles abroad present her as steadfast, supportive, misunderstood. Drama commentary sharpens the contrast. Harry's refuge narrative is defensive, born of panic. Meghan's counter-narrative is offensive, born of branding. He seeks sanctuary, she seeks spin. For Harry, the word refuge implies weakness. For Meghan, it implies a chance to reassert control, not a husband escaping, but a couple diversifying. Yet the cracks are visible even in her spin. Public fatigue with Meghan's brand is real. Netflix viewership of With Love, Meghan stumbled. Archwell's projects have failed to catch fire. Polls show her less popular in Britain than Prince Andrew. Even in America, once her strongest base, critics like Spotify's Bill Simmons call her and Harry grifters. Spin cannot erase statistics, but Meghan knows visibility is survival. As long as she controls the camera, she controls the story. And so, should Harry step foot in Windsor again, Meghan will choreograph her counterattack. She will post curated photos of Archie and Lilibet, blurring their faces with hearts to remind the world that she is the protective mother. She will give interviews reframing Harry's presence in England as part of a bigger plan. She may even launch another project timed conveniently to coincide, ensuring she not Harry remains the central headline. Commentators already anticipate the move. One royal biographer told The Sun, Meghan will never let the narrative become, Harry goes home because the marriage collapsed. She'll make it about strategy, not sorrow. And therein lies the tension. Harry's desperate refuge may be born of loneliness, but Meghan's counter-narrative will be born of calculation. Which leads to the central paradox. Harry wants England for identity. Meghan wants America for brand. To admit fracture would be to lose both. So she will reframe, repackage, respin until what looks like retreat becomes portrayed as reinvention. But no counter-narrative can change the fact that the gates of Windsor are guarded not just by cameras but by William, the immovable heir, who will see Harry's return not as refuge but as intrusion. And that blockade is where Harry's desperate plan meets its fiercest opposition. If Meghan is the master of spin, William is the master of the blockade. No matter how Harry frames his return for refuge, the first wall he must climb is not Charles's caution or Meghan's counterstory, it is William's fortress. And this fortress is built not of stone, but of principle, pride, and an unshakable sense of betrayal. Charles Ray put it plainly on The Sun, "You've got the William factor." William's not interested in any reconciliation. Those words hang like iron gates. William does not simply oppose Harry's return, he treats it as trespass. For him, Harry's dream of refuge in England is not a son coming home, it is an intruder knocking on the door of a house he burned. The reasons run deep. Spare turned brotherly rivalry into permanent rupture. Harry didn't just accuse William of being cold or complicit. He immortalized him as my arch nemesis. He detailed their alleged physical altercation, writing that William had grabbed me by the collar, ripped my necklace, and knocked me to the floor. Harry portrayed his brother not as future king but as bully. For William, this was not just betrayal, it was character assassination. And William is not just a brother. He is the heir. Every instinct, every calculation is filtered through the lens of monarchy. To reconcile with Harry is not personal forgiveness, it is institutional surrender. William knows the public polls. 73% oppose reconciliation. He knows that his popularity with Catherine remains one of the crown's strongest assets. To invite Harry back risks not only undermining his own authority but alienating the public who see Harry as toxic. For William, blocking Harry is not spite, it is duty. Drama commentary cuts sharper. William is the fortress because he must be. If Charles's reign is fragile, William's succession must be bulletproof. He cannot risk the monarchy appearing weak, forgiving, or naive. In his mind, Harry has already shown what happens when trust is extended. Oprah, Netflix, spare. Once burned, never again. The gates stay closed. And Catherine? Her quiet but potent influence strengthens the blockade. Meghan once accused her of making her cry. Harry printed private texts between them in spare. At Queen Elizabeth's funeral, cameras caught Catherine's frosty glare toward Meghan, dissected in slow-motion analysis. The Princess of Wales has no appetite for reconciliation. She embodies the memory of wounds Meghan inflicted. For William, her stance is validation. To open the gates to Harry would mean betraying his wife as much as his crown. The fortress metaphor extends to optics. At Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee, William and Catherine sat yards apart from Harry and Meghan, their distance carefully choreographed. At Charles's coronation, Harry was relegated to the third row, alone, while William stood front and center beside his father. Every public appearance reinforces the hierarchy. William ascendant, Harry excluded. The palace choreography is not accident, it is architecture. Commentators agree. One aide confided to The Times, "William and Harry will never reconcile. Too much has been said, too much has been printed. The heir cannot forgive the spare." This is not speculation, it is policy. William's fortress is not about personal grudges. It is about survival of the monarchy itself. And so Harry's desperate plan slams into the wall of his brother's resolve. Even if Charles softens, even if Meghan reframes, William's fortress stands immovable. Harry may daydream of refuge, but refuge requires entry. And the gatekeeper is his brother, the man who once shared a nursery, now guarding a throne. Drama commentary distills the cruelty. Harry fled Britain to escape hierarchy, yet hierarchy remains his greatest enemy. In California, Meghan overshadows him. In England, William overrules him. Between his wife's spotlight and his brother's fortress, Harry has no kingdom left to claim. Which leaves Charles the father, the king, the hesitant judge facing the impossible choice. Can he soften enough to welcome his son back, even if it means betraying his heir? Or will his compassion collapse under the weight of crown and public opinion? That is the dilemma awaiting in Chapter 7, Charles's illusion of compassion. If William is the fortress, Charles is the window cracked open, fragile, and swayed by the winds of sentiment. The king has always been torn between the public role he performs and the private emotions he conceals. With Harry's whispers of refuge back in England, the world wonders, will Charles yield to compassion? Or is compassion itself an illusion he cannot afford? Harry's own memoir, Spare, immortalized the father's vulnerability. In one of its most haunting lines, Charles pleads with his sons, "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." That was not a king speaking, that was a father begging. And yet by printing it, Harry transformed a moment of intimacy into ammunition. For Charles, that betrayal cut deeply. How can he ever extend compassion to a son whose weapon is love? And yet illness complicates the calculus. Since revealing his cancer diagnosis, Charles has been described by aides as more reflective, more emotional. One royal correspondent observed, "Illness makes reconciliation tempting. A man staring at his mortality longs for family, even if fractured." The public imagines a frail father reaching for peace, choosing affection over duty in his twilight years. Compassion, in this vision, becomes destiny. But monarchy does not bend easily to sentiment. Polls show 73% of Britons oppose reconciliation. William, the heir, refuses to forgive. Catherine will not forget. Meghan remains politically toxic. Compassion may soothe the heart, but it endangers the crown. Every act of softness risks looking like weakness. Every meeting with Harry risks fresh betrayal in the form of another headline, another Netflix revelation, another paperback edition. Drama commentary sharpens the dilemma. Charles is trapped between the man he once was and the monarch he must be. The man longs to embrace his son. The monarch knows the embrace could collapse public trust. Compassion is not safety. It is risk dressed in warmth. History deepens the irony. Charles once gambled his heart for Camilla, enduring decades of scorn to marry the woman he loved. In time, that gamble paid off. Camilla is now queen, her reputation rehabilitated. But Harry is no Camilla. He does not play the long game. He monetizes immediacy. A tea with Harry today could become a chapter tomorrow. For Charles, gambling compassion now is gambling the monarchy's very credibility. Insiders confirm the hesitation. One former aide told The Guardian, "The king's instinct is compassion, but his role is caution. He cannot be seen to undermine the heir for the sake of the spare." In other words, Charles cannot allow personal sentiment to eclipse institutional survival. To meet Harry might betray William. To exclude Harry might betray his own heart. Either choice is betrayal, only the object changes. And so, the illusion of compassion hangs like fog over Balmoral. To the public, the image of a king embracing his estranged son would look noble, even Christ-like. To the crown, it would look reckless. To William, it would look treacherous. And to Harry, it would look like leverage, a photograph to be monetized, a narrative to be spun. Drama commentary distills the cruelty. Charles's compassion is real, but it is trapped. Real enough to ache for his son, false enough to never be freely expressed. The father is prisoner to the king. And Harry, ever dangerous, ensures that even compassion itself feels like capitulation. Thus, the illusion persists. To the cameras, Charles can play the part of loving father, sending warm statements, nodding at mentions of Harry, leaving doors symbolically ajar. But behind palace walls, the embrace never comes. Because Charles knows that compassion in Windsor is not balm, it is bait. And so the king waits, suspended between instinct and duty. His compassion may comfort his conscience, but it cannot alter his reality. For in Windsor, compassion is illusion, and illusion is survival. Which brings us to the final verdict, not of Charles or William, not even of Meghan or Harry, but of the people themselves. For refuge means nothing if the public refuses it. And the public has already delivered its thunderous answer. If Charles's compassion is illusion, the public's verdict is reality, and reality has no mercy. Whatever dreams Harry harbors about returning to England for refuge, they crash against the granite wall of British opinion. Poll after poll confirms the same brutal message. Harry is no longer the beloved spare who once charmed the nation. He is a liability, and Britain does not want him back. The numbers are staggering. A survey discussed on The Sun's panel revealed that only 8% of respondents thought the king should meet Harry. 19% said it might depend on Harry making more effort first. But the overwhelming majority, 73%, flatly rejected the idea. Royal editor Victoria Murphy admitted she was surprised, but conceded, it reflects what we see in polling. William, Kate, and the king remain popular. Harry and Meghan are the ones who have dropped. This marks a cruel reversal of fortune. In 2017, Harry ranked among the most admired royals, rivaling even the Queen. He was Diana's boy, the soldier prince, the modernizer. Today, he polls below Andrew, an extraordinary fall, given Andrew's disgrace. One commentator in The Telegraph didn't sugarcoat it. Britons would rather forget Andrew than forgive Harry. That sentence alone captures how far the fairy tale has rotted. Drama commentary sharpens the paradox. Harry left Britain claiming he wanted privacy. Now, he dreams of refuge in a land where the public brands him dangerous, selfish, and disloyal. Privacy was the excuse. Irrelevance was the fear. And in Britain, irrelevance has already arrived. Public opinion is not just numbers, it is pressure. Politicians sense it. Tabloids amplify it. Even William draws legitimacy from it. If 3/4 of the country oppose reconciliation, no king can defy them without cost. Charles may ache as a father, but as monarch, he cannot embrace a son the people have exiled. To do so would be to risk his fragile popularity at a time when monarchy itself is under scrutiny. And then there is Meghan. Polls consistently show she is even less popular than Harry, a woman some Britons say will never set foot back in this country again. Charles Ray made that point bluntly. her relationship with Britain is destroyed. For many, the very mention of her name triggers fatigue, even contempt. If Harry returns, public opinion assumes Meghan will not, and that assumption hardens the perception of fracture. Refuge for him looks like rebellion against her. Commentators note a generational divide. Among younger Britons, sympathy for Harry and Meghan lingers. Among older generations, the monarchy's lifeblood, the rejection is ironclad. A 20-something may shrug at Harry's exile. A pensioner who remembers Diana sees only betrayal. And in Britain, it is the pensioners who keep the crown afloat. The tabloids, of course, feed the fire. Every move Harry makes abroad is spun as melodrama. Every rumor of return is amplified into speculation. Headlines scream, "Prodigal son," one day, and "Coward husband," the next. Public perception is not shaped by nuance, it is shaped by front pages. And for Harry, every front page is another brick in the wall of rejection. Drama commentary distills the cruelty. Refuge is only possible if the people allow it. But the people have already slammed the door. They see his California exit as betrayal, his Oprah interview as hypocrisy, his Netflix show as exploitation, his memoir as treason. They do not see a lost son. They see a man who cashed in the crown, and now wants a refund. Thus, the public's verdict is not just opinion. It is sentence. Harry may plead with his father, argue with his brother, or be spun by Meghan. But he cannot escape the reality that Britain no longer believes in him. Refuge, for the spare, is not welcome. It is ruin disguised as return. And so the stage narrows. With William immovable, Charles hesitant, and the people hostile, Harry's only battleground left is the media itself, the machine he claims to loathe, but the machine that has always